Hey folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery. Today I'm going to be sharing a version of the quilling paper ornament that I created years and years ago. It was actually featured in a 2016 Holiday Crafts magazine by Better Homes and Gardens, and I haven't been able to share the details of it because of that agreement, but I'm going to be sharing sort of the basic techniques today with a slightly different twist at the end. So let's get started with the supplies we're going to need for these ornaments. You're going to need the quilling paper of your choosing. This is 1/8 inch wide. These are the long strips from Lake City Crafts, so they're about 24 inches. I'm just having a true red and white for my ornament. I also like this gray for the top of the ornament that connects the holder. And then you're going to need a tiny bit of black, and that's just where you're going to put your string later. You're going to need a work board, a cork board that's covered in wax paper because we're going to be building our ornament on there. You're going to need something to build the base of your ornament around, something about 2 inches in diameter. I'm using this old glue bottle. I prefer plastic bottles for this. Glass bottles will work, but we'll talk about that later. You're going to need some white glue in a needle nose bottle if you have it, a quilling tool of your choice, some tweezers, some scissors, a paintbrush to get rid of any extra glue, and some pins. You're also going to need whatever string you'd like to use to hang your ornament later. This is just black twine. The first step in making these ornaments is to take whatever your main color is, and we're going to wrap it around that bottle that you chose, whatever that, we're using it as a mold, so let's just call it that. Whatever mold you're going to be using to wrap your paper around, that's going to make the outside circle of your ornament. So again, I'm using this true red paper. It's about 24 inches long. I'm going to be using 2 strips. This is not going to be an exact measurement because your bottle or whatever you're wrapping might be a different size. You might have to just eyeball this. I like mine to just be nice and thick, and it's just going to make it really sturdy. So we're just going to be wrapping it around, but through my trial and error, I will give you some tips on how to make this work out the best for you. Torn edges on your paper, we're going to put a tiny dot of glue right on the edge and make sure that sticks. It's okay if the glue comes out a little bit from the sides and from the end. We'll take care of all that later. After that sticks, you want to go to right where it's already stuck, right on the end, and apply a solid line of glue, a thin line, all the way down the entire strip of paper. So we're essentially gluing this into place around the bottle. I've tried to do this where I don't glue it to the bottle itself, and it just does not have the same strength to the circle when you're done. Try to get every little bit of the glue or of the strip with a thin spot of glue in a line. This is where that needle nose bottle really will come in handy. Once you get up to where your paper had began, you want to make sure that you get it lined up on top as close as you can. It will be okay if once you take this off, you see it's not 100% even all the way around. You won't notice that in the end, but try to do your best and to get it as even as you can. Once you get to the point where you have overlapped, you're just going to keep doing the same thing. Apply glue all the way down the strip and wrap it around again, but try to make it again so it just lines up right on top. It's okay if this process takes some time. I will mention as well, as you're doing this, you want to be pressing down so that you don't get any bubbles between the 2 strips of paper or between the paper and the bottle. So you can see I'm kind of pushing down with my thumb as I turn. I'm not pulling the paper, so there's a chance of it ripping or stretching out. I'm just kind of squeezing it down as I go. I know this looks a little bit cuckoo and time consuming, but like I said, I've made these a ton of times. I used to sell them in my Etsy shop. I have made a lot of these, and this is just the technique that I have found to give you the sturdiest and most consistent ring that you're going to then build your ornament out of later. Just keep going in the same direction, in the same way with the glue and the paper. When you get to the end of your strip, you're going to want to glue it all the way down. And then, like I said, I found that one strip on this 2-inch diameter bottle is not sturdy enough. So I add another strip on and do the same exact thing. So right there is where my paper stopped. I'm going to add a little bit of glue, get my second paper that the edges have been torn off that one too. Remember, torn edges are really great in quilling paper because the little bits of paper that are left on the edge really grab glue and make things lay down very smoothly. I did the same thing, a little bit of glue where the paper strip was beginning, and then this time I put the glue on the circle that was already on the bottle, and I'm just laying my strip down and smoothing it as I go. Whichever technique works better for you, go ahead and do that, as long as there is a consistent line of glue. If you do kind of miss a spot, you're going to have like a bubble where your paper just isn't smooth all the way around. I'm just going to keep doing this till you get to the end of the second strip, and then at that point your paper should be good to go. If your bottle's a different size, use your best judgment. When in doubt, I say put a little bit more paper on. It's just going to make it that much more sturdy. Once you're done wrapping your strip around, you're going to let this dry for a while. I would give it a couple of hours because there's a lot of glue in there and you really want that to set. After you think it's dry, you can go ahead and gently remove it from your bottle. Like I said before, I prefer a plastic bottle because I can kind of give it a little squeeze and that will break the seal of the glue, where the first layer where it was on the bottle itself. Glass will work as well. You might just have to use a little bit more oomph to push it instead of kind of to squeeze so it pops the glue. That very first spot where you glued your piece down with a little bit extra glue, that might give you a bit more resistance. Sometimes, like I just showed there, I had to kind of squeeze my needle tool underneath just to kind of give it a little bit of a nudge. Again, I've made this many times. I've made it on both glue and plastic bottles. It will come off. Just be gentle and be patient. And you can see now it's a pretty good looking circle. It might not be 100%, but it will do. There's a little bit of dried glue on the edges that you can see. I usually just gently scrape that down and it pops right off. You could, if you have a little bit more than that, use some small scissors and just give it a snip or two. But they really do come right off. And also a little tip, if you're planning on making these, you can usually do a few of these rings on the same bottle at the same time, and that'll save you on some drying time. I'll usually line up a few going down the bottle, let them all dry at the same time, and then push them off from the end. So once you have your outside ring of your ornament done, you're going to put that on your cork board or your corrugated cardboard covered in wax paper, whatever you use to make your quilling on. I like to put it right in the center and then make sure that it's not going to move with 4 pins in every direction, just to give it a nice sturdy spot. We're going to be, for this design, splitting our ornament up into 3 segments. It's going to have sort of a little kind of a cat eye shape in the middle out of other strips of paper, and then we're going to fill in those 3 segments. For my design, I'm going to be doing an outside segment of red, and then the inside's going to be white, and then the outside of that other side is going to be red. So in order to differentiate between the 3 segments, I'm going to glue a strip of red and a strip of white paper together, back to back. So just trust the process right here and follow me for a moment. I'm making a double thick strip of paper, which I've made many times on my channel. I'll link to a whole video on that down below. But this time, instead of using the same color, I'm using 2 different colors. This is going to make a really sturdy strip that I can use to separate the sections. So I lined them up evenly, and then I put some glue on the edge. I made sure that they are lying right on top of each other. Nobody's going off crooked in any direction. And at that point, I'm going to apply some glue, very similarly to how I did the outside of the ornament, doing a solid line of glue all the way down. I'm doing this again, going over this spot here because I had a little bit of gaps. You don't want any gaps, even those tiny ones like that. I'm going to apply a line of glue all the way down to the end of this red strip. After I have my glue all the way down one of the 2 strips, in this case the red, I'm going to very carefully kind of use my fingers like a little zipper and zip them all back together again. I just sort of run them through my fingers in a couple different directions to make sure that there's no bubbles and that everything is just even Steven all the way down. And then once I'm satisfied, smooth out that little wrinkle from the top. Once I'm satisfied that this is ready to go, I'm going to set that aside to dry. It's very important that you let these stiffen up a little bit because that's how you're going to be able to really mold them later and get the segments separated the way you want to. I'm also going to make a couple different double thick strips of the 2 colors I'm going to be using to fill in the rest of my ornament. So like I said, I'm going to have a whole white section, so I'm folding a white strip in half, tearing off the edges to make sure that they lay smooth, and then I will apply some glue all the way down one half of this strip the same way that I just did on the one that was 2 colors, but in this case it's just the 1 color, and then I'll zip them together as well, making sure that there's no air bubbles and that everything's even. For each of these ornaments I'm going to make either 2 or 3 strips of these, probably 3 just in case something happens and one strip doesn't work out or whatever the case might be. It's just easier to have everything done and dry so I can just build after that. So I'm going to make a few of the white ones. The other 2 segments of my ornament are going to be red, so I'm going to make a few red ones. Again, I have an entire video about how to make these double thick strips and why. It's called On Edge Quilling, and I'm going to leave all that link to that video, down below this video in the description box in case you need to refer to that. So just to recap again once more, we made our red and white strip to separate the 3 sections. We made some double thick white strips for the middle, and I'm going to make off screen some double thick red strips for the 2 outside sections. So we should have 3 different types of double thick strips at this point. And now here comes the fun part. We're going to start building our ornament. So you have your red and white strip, And now it's nice and sturdy because the glue is dried. We're going to make 2 strips of this in that sort of cat eye shape, the shape I had sort of scratched out in the beginning. I'm going to rip off about 3 inches or so. I'm going to gently curl it with my fingernail. You want to run it along a quilling tool or something like that. You can do that too. We're just sort of softening it up a little bit. We want a gentle arc in this. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to tear it, but I first want to sort of measure. I'm looking for it to be about that long and about that shape. I'm going to tear off a little bit longer than that, just in case. It's easier to trim it down. You can't add on to this. And I need 2 of these. I have found it's easiest from the very beginning just to measure the other one instead of trying to estimate it all over again. I'm going to soften that one up as well. And you want to be careful of your placement. You should have, each of these strips are going to have a white side and a red side, or whichever color you're choosing. Because I want my white to be the inside segment, this very center segment, I need the white side to be always facing that side. I laid my strip down, the first one, and I didn't really like the length of it. It was a little bit long, which I expected because I tore it a little bit longer than I measured to begin with, just to be on the safe side. I'm going to line it up again, and I'm looking for a shape that I like. Before I glue, I want to line up the other one, this time making sure that that white is also facing the inside. Don't like that shape. That was a little bit big, again expected because I measured it a little bit big from the beginning. So let's tear off a little bit, run it through my fingers a couple more times to make sure that I like the shape of it, and tuck that in. Let's see how we feel about that. Still looking a tiny bit long. Don't really love the arc that it's giving me. Now at this point, that one now looks a little bit long. I like the bottom shape a lot. It looks like that is going to be a nice arc that looks just like the one on the end of the ornament. We're getting close. We're getting close. I think that this side is just a little bit, I want it to come in just a little bit. So I take that back out and give it another trim. I know this seems, again, like super twiddly and fussy. This is just how I make mine. There is, you know, a lot of measure and cut. You want to make sure that you're happy with your final product. That looks pretty good. It looks pretty even. I like the shape of the center. I think we're a go. We've got our pieces together. We are sure that the colors are going to be separated. And we can start gluing. I'm doing a little bit of a dip method here. The pins will kind of start getting in the way a little bit. You can take those out. You can just put them to the side of just to the side of the center for a bit if you want, or I just took mine out. Or if you want to, you can just leave them in and just glue your paper to the side of them. That's okay too. You really probably won't even notice. Gonna let this part dry for just a bit, and then we're gonna start filling in the middle first, and then we'll move on to fill in the outsides. I got my white strip here. I just tore off a shorter length just to make it a little bit easier to work with. And to fill in the center, because again, that's where we're starting with this part, to fill in the center shape, it's a very similar process to the one I just showed. I'm going to measure out the white paper, trying to get the arc that I'm looking for, and then make another one that's about the same size, a little bit longer just to be on the careful side. Make a nice arc by running it through my fingers, and then test it out. If it's a little bit long, trim it down. And try again. as you get more in the practice of doing this, you're going to be better at manipulating your paper. You're going to be better at judging how long your strips need to be. You're going to get, more familiar with the arc and how comfortable you are with what you can do with that shape. I promise this will go faster. This is not a super beginning quilling paper project. This might not be the first project you want to attempt. I would love it if you did, but you might want to get more used to the feel of paper before you jump in to this ornament project. Just something to bear in mind. Pretty happy with that layer, so I'm going to go ahead and apply a little bit of glue to the ends. You can still use dip method, or you can go right from your glue bottle. It's up to you. And I'm going to glue those in place. Just going to keep going at this point and filling in the white circle with more layers. I think for this one I ended up just doing one more layer instead of really filling it in. You can add more rows if you want to. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. When you're at the end, just take a look and see what you think. You say, oh, I want to fill it in a little bit more, or I have an idea to fill it in with this shape, or add swirls, or add beehive quilling to the inside. However you would like to fill in these ornaments, totally up to you. I do have a couple of different variations at the end I will show. You never have to take my idea and just do it as is. I always like to see everybody's interpretation. I want to just mention one thing before I move on, because I think everybody's probably sort of understanding how we're filling in this shape with these double thick strips. If you need to, you can also use pins to manipulate these lines and kind of get them to go where you want them to go. If your strips, they're long enough and you like the shape they're giving you, but it's not 100% perfect, you can use a pin or two just to kind of nudge them into place, and that will get them to line up a little bit more straight or a little bit more curved or whatever you need. So one of those two lines that I just put in doesn't look as equal to the other one, but I know the length is good. Give it a little bit of a nudge with a pin, and it will do what I want it to do. There you go. Leave them in while it dries, and once you take them out, those lines won't move. They'll be exactly where you want them. At this point, I'm going to move on to the two outer segments. These are both going to be filled in with double strips of red paper. Obviously, I'm speeding this up here because I think you're sort of getting the picture of what I'm doing. This time, same exact process, except the strips are going to be longer and the arc is going to be a little bit deeper because we are filling in the deeper segments on the end. So the same exact technique here. Softening the paper, measuring it, manipulating it to make sure that we like the shape and we like the length of it, and then we're gluing it into place once we're confident that we like the size. I'm only going to be doing 2 strips on either side of these as well. I'm not filling them in super tight. That is a choice. You can add more, and like I said, I'll show different variations in the end, but we're just continuing filling in different strips until we're happy with the design. All my segments are now filled in the way I like them. I made a double thick strip of the gray quilling paper that I showed in the beginning, and I'm going to use that to make a rectangular shape on one side of my ornament. And that is, if you can picture, your ornament has the ball, and then it has kind of a silver part, and then it has what the hanger attaches to, this is the silver part. To start with, I'm going to make a line of glue on one side, what I would consider the top of my ornament, and it's about 3/4 of an inch long. It's going to look something like that. And I'm going to use some pins to help this shape stay as a rectangle. One pin right where I started, and then one pin right where the glue ended. That's going to be one side of this sort of rectangular shape that I'm going to be making. I'm going to now use the pin and my fingers to make the first corner of the rectangle. So I just bent it around the pin, went up about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to put another pin in right in line. And I'm going to do the same thing, bend my strip around that pin. So now you can see I'm at the top of what's going to be our rectangle. And another pin to finish out that last corner. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, but you know, just like anything else, just stay with me. Bend it in so it's at the beginning point, measuring how long that is with a little bit of a bend. I'm going to snip off a little ways past that, take my needle tool, push it inside between those two, that green and that blue pin. So now that end is inside the rectangle. And holding my finger there so everything stays in place, I'm going to use that first pin to pull the paper back out and make the corner again. I know you think just make a rectangle and just slap it on there, but this just makes it a little bit more fluid onto the shape. Now I don't really like that pin there. It looks kind of out of place. I'm going to move that one up and pull the paper out so it's a little bit more even. Being that this is just paper, you can move things around. It's okay. Everything's got a little less than perfect there, but I'll fix that in a second. I'm going to put a little bit of glue at the part where it overlaps, and then put my pin in and pinch in that corner to make it a little bit straighter. Just squeeze that puppy in there. And now I have my rectangle that's attached to the top. Of course, we can't leave that little silver rectangle empty. We're going to fill it in with an S curve. That means take about 6 inches of your same silver quilling paper, roll it about halfway down on your quilling tool, and then you're going to flip it over. So you're on the opposite side when you're rolling the other half. Roll that all the way down to where your other one ended, and it looks like a letter S made of 2 coils. And that just kind of gets plopped into a little rectangle. Just to fill that in, give it a little bit of a different texture. And I like to glue this once it's in to the rectangle. Take your pins out and just kind of nudge your glue bottle in there around the sides. If you don't have one of these glue bottles, you can do this with a toothpick or even the end of your quilling tool if you clean it off afterwards. Don't forget to wipe out any excess glue. There you go. The last thing we need to do is to make the black part that's going to connect your string to your ornament. This is again about 6 inches or so. I'm going to roll this strip all the way from end to end. And then I'm going to leave my needle tool in there. This would work best with a needle tool as opposed to a slotted tool, and unwind it almost all the way and let it go. I want that inside curl to still be there. And at this point, I just have to wrap it all back up again, but not all the way. So I'm going to start by leaving the first curl separated from that inner curl where I left my tool. And as I wind it, it's not going to go in any further. It's just going to kind of now be an open circle with that other little coil in the middle. This is just a design choice. You don't have to leave that inner coil if it's not something you like. I just prefer to make this part that way. So again, there you go, a little circle in a circle. And I'm going to glue that to the end of the silver. Just wanted to mention a couple tips about making these ornaments. You want to make sure that every piece is lying completely flat and is even. Nothing is sticking up higher than anything else. That's going to ensure a nice finished product. And you also want to make sure you're using the same width of quilling strips for every part of this. Whether it's 1/8 inch like what I'm using here or something a little bit larger, just make sure every color for every part of this is the same width. Here are some variations that I promised. The first two are similar to what I made today, but just with more strips and different sizes. This one is made similarly to the rainbow umbrella that I showed a couple of weeks ago. And then I also have this different color version of the hot pink ones that I showed in the beginning. In case you're wondering how to do this, you're splitting it into 3 sections. So you're going to be using those multicolored strips in 3 different ways for the center section and then on the sides as well. And then we're filling them in with just some loops tucked under each other instead of long strips. Again, I can't go into a lot of detail, but there's some basic idea. Feel free to expand on these however you'd like to. Fill them in, like I said, with whatever you wish. These are just some ideas. I do want to also just touch base about how to hang these. This is, like I said, is just, I think it's about 8 inches of black twine. This is a regular string you can buy at your craft store. I just tied a knot into the end and just make a little loop. I know also I'm going to get questions about sealing these because I always do. I coat mine with a couple layers of just plain Mod Podge. I haven't had any problems with these. Like I said, I've made a ton of these. I've given them away. I've sold them. I just do a small coat with the Mod Podge just to kind of keep them in shape. But they are paper. You know, I wouldn't go ahead throwing these around, but if you package them up carefully, they do make very nice gifts. Please don't hesitate to leave any questions you have in the comment section for this video, and I will answer them as soon as I can. I know this is a tiny bit trickier than other videos that I've posted, but I know everybody can handle it. We've got this. Also, look in the description box for links to any supplies you might need or any other videos that will be helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.